looks familiar. What? He was an idol? Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The History of K-pop Season 1, where we take a trip back in time to discover the roots of the K-pop industry that we know and love today, and who is part of those roots. Let me ask you guys one question. Did you know that the founder of YG Entertainment was one of the first K-pop idols? Yeah, I didn't really know that until recently either. What? He was an idol? Well, by our definition, he wasn't exactly an idol, but he was at the forefront of the development of what is now called K-pop. In today's episode of the History of K-pop, we'll continue exploring the pre-first generation artists by looking at Seo Taiji and Boys. If you guys remember from the last episode, we didn't get to talk about the third pre-first generation group. In the next episode, we'll continue exploring a pre-first generation artist, in fact, the one who left the most significant legacy in the South Korean music industry, Seo Taiji and Boys. Ah, yes, that was the third one. And not to disappoint anyone, this is that group. In the 1990s, this group became one of the most important Korean artists ever and would significantly change the Korean popular music scene. Many would say they paved the way for what K-pop has become today. Given how important and long-lasting the group's impact is, we'll surely be exploring every single corner they went to in their history. Whatever that means. We'll uncover their origin story, their music, and how they began to influence the Korean music scene. Alright, without further ado, let's get right into it.
Let's go!
Before we dive deep into learning about Seo Taiji and Boys, we need some background information to ease ourselves into the episode, right? So, what should we start off with? Alright, let's start off with that. The legendary K-pop group Seo Taiji and Boys debuted in 1992 and was made up of 3 members, the leader, Seo Taiji, and 2 dancers, Lee Juno and Hyun-suk, better known as YG. And yes, the YG of YG Entertainment. This is not where I was expecting to hear his name, but here he is. Just to give you guys a bit of context, in South Korea, it is widely known that the before and after of Korean popular music history is distinguished by the emergence of Seo Taiji and Boys. As a group that forever changed the country's popular music scene, they would eventually become known as the President of Culture. Now let's move on to the group's name. It does sound quite straightforward, right? If you thought so, you would be right. The group name, Seo Taiji and Boys itself, suggests that either Seo Taiji was responsible for the majority of the album production, or that the group was formed to promote Seo Taiji more than the other members. This might be jumping ahead a little bit, but this notion was even reflected in how their income and profits were divided. When Seo Taiji appeared on a TV show, Happy Together, he himself has said that the album profits were distributed in the ratio of 2 to 2 to 6, with Seo Taiji taking the 6, while YG and Lee Juno took the 2s, as Seo Taiji did the majority, if not all of the work on the album. On the other hand, the performance profits were divided in the ratio of 3 to 3 to 4, with Seo taking the 4 and with YG and Lee Juno taking the 3 each. Now that we have some of the basics out of the way, let's get right into how the group was formed. Of course, one of the most important aspects of a group's history is how they were originally formed. For this group, we sourced the story of Seo Taiji and Boys' formation from YG's own words, which he shared during an appearance on SBS Healing Camp in episodes 43 and 44. Seo Taiji and Boys has become one of the most impactful groups in the history of K-pop, but they actually had very humble beginnings. Unlike most groups today, the trio was not scouted or trained by an entertainment agency. In fact, Seo Taiji and YG first met at a place that was quite far from being an entertainment agency, and it was at a nightclub. But I suppose this would be a great place for networking, I guess. At this nightclub, again, a great networking environment, Seo Taiji had been working as a bass player for singer Kim Jong-seo and had previously left the rock band Shinawi. At the time, YG had been working as part of a dance team promoting with singer Park Nam-jung, who was famous for this dance. The script is telling me to try some sort of a dance move, and I don't know what dance move it is. Like, maybe this one? I don't know. I guess I'm a dancer now. Although YG and Seo Taiji didn't know it, their paths would soon cross. Someone made the first move, and it was none other than Seo Taiji himself. Seo Taiji first approached YG at the nightclub to ask him for advice on where he could learn how to dance. I guess a great cause starts with a simple reason sometimes. Without giving it much thought, he initially directed Seo Taiji to a nightclub in the Itaewon neighborhood of Seoul, where many dancers gathered to practice. Seo Taiji showed up at that club the following day, sat down in a corner, and simply watched all the dancers practicing. And then he just left. What? Well, he didn't just do that for days, rather, he repeated that for about a month. Wait, did I just read a month? Supposedly, he was hoping and expecting that YG himself would be teaching him how to dance there, since it was the location he had recommended. Understandably, but obviously, Seo Taiji was dissatisfied with this outcome.
당연하죠.
And after a month of coming and going, he approached YG once more to ask that he teach him how to dance professionally. Maybe that's what he should have done in the first place. YG, being a famous and reputable dancer at the time, wasn't particularly inclined to teach Seo Taiji, so he decided to offer him lessons at an extremely expensive cost, thinking Seo Taiji would not seriously take up the lessons if he did that. YG also requested that 3 months worth of lesson fees were paid up front, prior to starting the lessons. Seo Taiji was desperate to learn how to dance professionally at that point, and ended up paying the lesson fees to YG. So, I guess your faves will teach you their skills for the right amount of money? Maybe don't try that one at home. Once this rather unfair agreement was reached, YG asked Seo Taiji whether he had any prior dance experience. His new pupil showed him the dance he had practiced, which was a dance that YG performed with his team and that had been secretly recorded by Seo Taiji. Unfortunately, this meant that the choreography he practiced was in the reverse direction, as he had learned it from the video he recorded, which would have been a mirrored image of what the actual choreography is. Why didn't he just figure out the right side from the left side from the get-go? Anyway, things seemingly seemed like they were going well, but only for a short period of time. A month into the dance lessons, YG received a letter informing him that he was due to enlist in Korea's mandatory military service. Oh, yikes. At this time, it is said that there was not much time given between receiving the notice and the actual date of enlistment, and it was illegal to not appear on that date. YG supposedly never refunded Seo Taiji for the remaining 2 months of his lessons due to the urgent nature of military enlistment. And I'd assume it was a lot of money that YG did not return. However, his enlistment would ultimately not last as long as mandated due to a medical condition that YG developed over his 8-month service in the military. According to YG himself, he could not bear the emotional toll of his freedom being withheld, which restricted him from dancing to his heart's content and caused him to become depressed. These conditions apparently led to his heart beating abnormally fast, and he developed high blood pressure, resulting in him fainting often. For these reasons, YG would be discharged from the military 8 months into his enlistment period, much shorter than the usual 3-year commitment at that time. When he returned from the military, YG contacted Seo Taiji, who had already been working towards his solo debut album and song. And when the two met up again, YG was given the chance to listen to his new music, and conveniently forgot to discuss the prepaid lesson fee that YG never gave back. Anyway, once YG had listened to it, he suggested to Seo Taiji that his album would require the right outfits and choreography to match the dance genre it featured. He also recommended that Seo Taiji should create his own dance team, which YG was willing to help him build, instead of Seo Taiji trying to learn all by himself. Ouch. But YG made it clear that he would not be on this team, as he had no intention of debuting as a singer. However, this feeling would not last, as Seo Taiji agreed to incorporate these suggestions into his debut project and eventually convinced YG to join his team. That was easy. Once YG agreed to join Seo Taiji, the two focused on creating a dance team. They were looking for new members and went through quite some changes in the format and members of the team. At that time, YG had a good friend named Lee Juno, who would ultimately be the final member to join their team. But YG hesitated to bring him on board at first because he was also a dancer and was 2 years older than him, therefore making it more difficult for YG to completely manage the group's choreography. In the end, it was Lee Juno who approached YG and asked if he could be recruited, as he had often expressed to YG that he would want to promote together if they were ever going to become singers. Although Seo Taiji and YG had been looking for a younger member, YG finally introduced Lee Juno to Seo Taiji and recommended that their team needed a more experienced, professional dancer rather than a younger one who would need to be trained separately. From this point onward, Lee Juno became a part of their team, although his voice would never be included on the debut album, since he joined after the recording of the album was completed. That is very unfortunate. Originally named Taiji Boys, the group would change their name and debut as Seo Taiji and Boys after a member of their management mistranslated it in Korean. I guess I'm kinda glad that the group's name didn't turn out to be Taiji Boys. And with that, we've arrived at the end of today's episode. Just to recap, we started with a brief introduction to Seo Taiji and Boys and took a deep dive into how the group was formed. What a great way to kickstart things into the next episode, right? But yeah, this is just the beginning, so I hope you'll keep watching the History of K-pop series to discover these fascinating pieces of K-pop's early days. Trust me, there is still lots more to come. And as for the next episode, we'll be talking about the group's first 2 album promotions. One thing we can spoil about the next episode is that Seo Taiji and Boys came out with a bang. And another bang. And, well, you'll see what comes after. Now, before we sign off, I'll leave you with this question today. Have you guys heard about Seo Taiji and Boys before? And did you know YG played such a key role in one of the first K-pop groups? Please leave a comment below with your answer, and please, for the second time, let us know what we might have missed in today's video or if anything needs to be corrected. And please, for the third time, leave any questions you have throughout the season on any particular video in the series, as we're planning to have a special review or Q&A episode at the end of this season. Who knows, maybe we'll even make a video about topics you discuss in the comments. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Hit that subscribe button if you want to tune in next time, and remember to stay awkward. Bye!